In 2010, I was living in Mexicali, Baja California. At that time, I lived with my 2 sisters, my parents, and 2 cousins who stayed with us because our house was closer to the university. The house we lived in was rented. It had 3 bedrooms, a small living room, the kitchen, the bathroom, and a very small patio. Our house comprised the 2nd floor of the building. I want to clarify that the ground floor was another dwelling, separate from ours. We chose the upper one because it was in better condition than the lower one. Besides, it was more affordable. As far as I know, the house downstairs had been unoccupied for quite some time. I know this might sound like a cliché from a horror movie. The typical family moves into a house and soon realizes that strange things happen there. Well, yes, that's how it was. The truth is that these things happen in real life, probably more often than we think. Returning to my story, everything seemed fine at first until strange things started happening. We began by hearing noises in the house below, which, as I mentioned, was uninhabited. Curiously, it sounded as if someone was doing laundry or something like that. Additionally, on certain occasions, footsteps could be heard, as if someone were running from one side to another. Sometimes we heard a child crying. The strange thing was that this could happen in broad daylight or in the middle of the night. I remember we informed Señors Margarita, the owner of both houses, about this. We feared it might be intruders, but she didn't pay much attention, so we eventually tried to do the same. We overlooked all of it. Of course, the idea of ghostly apparitions and such crossed our minds, but it wasn't something we took very seriously. After all, it wasn't happening in our house, although we were about to realize how wrong we were. We don't know if the paranormal phenomena gradually became more frequent, or if we just started paying more attention. We often noticed that objects changed positions and some were never found. My mom and my cousins were usually the first to get up. Almost always, they would find the kitchen light on in the mornings. At first, we thought anyone could have left it on overnight, but later we realized that wasn't the case. We often heard a voice coming from inside. We never distinguished what it said. It spoke in a murmur like someone praying softly. I remember that bathroom had a small window high up that faced the patio. Several times it broke. We could never explain why. That bathroom had a frosted glass screen, the kind that offers a bit of extra privacy when you're taking a shower. Well, on several occasions, we noticed handprints appearing on the glass. I still get chills remembering those hands marked in different areas of the screen. This alone had us terrified, but among everything, I can highlight 2 particularly intense experiences. The first one I'll tell you about happened one night when we all woke up suddenly at the same time. The cause? We clearly heard the sound of something very heavy falling in the kitchen. It was as if the refrigerator had fallen over, like someone had slammed it down with great force. We quickly went to see, but nothing was out of place. Quite scared, we went back to bed, but certainly none of us could go back to sleep. We lived with our nerves on edge. Almost any noise or object that fell startled us. We realized that being in that house was starting to affect our mood. No one in the family could sleep peacefully. Believe me, being in a place like that is very exhausting. A few days later, my parents told some neighbors about what we had been experiencing, to see if they knew anything about it, but they didn't say much. They only mentioned that both houses had been unrented for a while, and that the one upstairs had been remodeled to attract tenants. In fact, we were the first to move in after that. Days passed, and when it was time to renew the lease, my parents spoke directly with Señors Margarita. They explained what was happening and asked her to tell us everything she knew. To our surprise, she didn't try to hide anything. She was very honest. She told us that previously the 2 floors were a single house and that around 2004, she rented the property to a family. She said the father had drug addiction problems, and one day, after a heated argument with his wife, he ended up stabbing her. Then he did the same to his 2 children. According to police investigations, the man later went up to the bathroom on the 2nd floor and committed suicide there. Soon after, rumors spread about the house. It was said to be haunted. Neighbors claimed to see silhouettes moving inside and hear noises, as if someone inhabited the property. This made it impossible to rent. It took more than 2 years for someone to come and live there. The same happened with the next 2 families. Dona Margarita began to think that the rumors were true, but she decided to discreetly ask why the last family had decided to leave just 15 days after moving in. They assured her that something was wrong with that house. something beyond any logical explanation. They constantly witnessed the appearance of children running through the hallways. They told her that most of the activity occurred on the lower floor. It got to a point where it was unthinkable to be there at any time of the day. They said it was easier to endure what happened in the upper floor, and just before nightfall they would lock themselves in their room and avoid going out. No one dared to go down to the first floor, and there were many more things they didn't even want to recount. It was then that the lady decided to divide the house into two, making adjustments so that each floor would become an independent home. She heeded the last family's advice and only remodeled the upper floor, as according to them, that was where fewer paranormal phenomena occurred. I got chills when I heard this. Nevertheless, the house's bad reputation persisted until, sometime later, we arrived, surprised by the modest rent cost. Despite all this, we continued living there. Our financial situation didn't allow us to move elsewhere. Dona Margarita was somewhat compassionate with us, although I think it was more out of fear that we would leave. Ultimately, she lowered the rent for us. It was an offer we couldn't refuse. She even offered to sell us both floors, giving us many payment options. But the truth was, we were just hoping our situation would improve so we could leave. Days passed, and then the strongest and most terrifying manifestation of all occurred. It was the experience that drove us to leave that cursed house almost immediately. It was a night when I was left alone with one of my sisters. We were watching a movie when she asked me to pause it because she needed to go to the bathroom. She headed down the hallway and I stayed lying on the couch. Suddenly I heard her scream. Then she started calling me desperately. I imagined it had to do with the inexplicable things that happened there. However, I think neither of us was prepared to see something like that. I don't even know how I managed to get there in just a couple of seconds, but when I arrived I saw my sister standing outside the bathroom, staring fixedly inside. It was as if she was in shock, unable to move. I followed her gaze and saw that the bathroom light was flickering on and off. But what truly terrified us was the silhouette of a person reflected on the frosted glass of the shower screen. It was a tall figure standing completely still. My sister and I were frozen, unable to process what we were witnessing. The air felt heavy and a cold shiver ran down my spine. I grabbed my sister's hand and we slowly backed away, never taking our eyes off the bathroom door. Once we reached the living room, we heard a loud thud as if something had fallen inside. That was enough to snap us out of our stupor. We ran out of the house without looking back. Once outside, we tried to catch our breath and make sense of what had just happened. We decided to wait for our parents and cousins to return before going back inside. When they arrived and we told them what we had seen, they were understandably skeptical at first, but the fear in our eyes convinced them that something was seriously wrong. We all agreed that it was time to leave the house for good. That night, we packed a few essentials and checked into a nearby hotel. The following days were spent searching for a new place to live. We were fortunate to find another house, albeit at a higher rent, but it was worth it for the peace of mind it provided. Since moving, we haven't experienced anything remotely similar to the horrors of that house. In 2016, my father secured a better job in Mexico City, allowing us to buy our own home. It's a relief to have a place where we can finally feel safe and sleep soundly. The last time I saw that cursed house was in 2015. Standing in front of it, I couldn't help but relive the fear. It was vacant, and I wondered if anyone dared to live there after us. I feel sorry for Señors Margarita, as renting the house was likely her main source of income, but I feel even more for any family that might move in. This was my story. I'm grateful for the opportunity to share it and for your time. Take care. We were relieved to have left that haunted place behind. Our new home brought us the tranquility we had longed for, and we could finally sleep without fear. The experiences we endured in that house remain etched in our memories, a chilling reminder of a chapter we were glad to close. We moved forward, embracing the future with hope and gratitude for the safety we now enjoyed.